Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Imaging USA Unpacked with Pat Miller today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We're going to talk a little bit more about Pat's class, his GAP class, more money, less work, optimize your productivity to get more things done. I've got some great reviews too. I wanted to share a couple of my favorites. I heard this was Pat's first platform talk and my jaw dropped. He was fantastic. He provided real actionable ideas and steps to streamline and delegate tasks. This was beyond helpful. Fabulous, best program of the conference. My favorite program I saw. Literally goes on and on and on. What a great way to start this broadcast. I'm just excited to be here with you. For everyone attending, thank you for doing this for yourself. This class is for you, so be sure to drop in your questions. If you have some continuation of an idea or thought or question you'd like to have answered, I'm gonna hand this over to Pat to basically give you a little bit of a recap on what his class was about and start this program off.
Well, it's great to be here, Elena. Thank you for having me. And howdy, everyone. It's great to see you again. It's kind of like we're back together again in Louisville, but we're like digitally here. And yes, I'm going to recap what we talked about real quick. But what I want today to be is kind of a working session. I want to hear from you about, is there anything that we talked about when I was on stage that maybe you tested or tried, and maybe you have questions, or better yet, you tried something and it worked. And I want to hear the celebration. I want to hear, I tried the thing and it worked. So I want to hear from you if we were in the same room at Imaging. And I definitely want your questions, comments, and sarcastic remarks in the chat. So make sure you fill them up. So hopefully today will be kind of a working session. So let me go over what we talked about while I was there, and then we can get down to the rest of it and hopefully your questions. So what did we talk about while we were there? Well, if you were there, you heard me talk about my wife, who is a brilliant photographer. She started her own studio and she built it from the ground up. And as a radio guy at the time, I got a front row seat to watch her build her business. I left radio, started into consulting small businesses. And what I watched her go through, and I watch all of the folks in my small business community go through, are the struggles in three different areas: time, money, and vision. So during the talk, we talked about the vision for your photography studio and the big wake-up call that you are a small business owner that happens to use a camera to make money. Just like you're a small business owner that makes ice cream cones to make money, but you're a small business owner first. That's why you're a part of the Professional Photographers Association of America. So what we talked about with vision was casting a vision that you can actually monetize. And that usually starts with selecting a style of photography that you love the most and it's profitable. Now, I put it in that order because you got to get clear on what you want to do, and you can pick anything that you're talented enough to do. But when small business gets hard, if you don't love what you're doing, and like really love what you're doing, you're going to get burned out, you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to quit. So you find the vertical that you love, then you match it up with the vertical you make money on, and then you run for office with that really clear example. So at the conference, I used the example of, I want to do weddings. Cool, that's not specific enough. I want to do weddings outdoors. Now that's awesome. So I used the example of an outdoor wedding photographer for couples in Nashville. When you are that clear, you're going to stand out easier and you're going to find your ideal customers faster. So that was vision. Then we talked about time. And what I meant about time is we get to pick when we work, we get to pick what we do when we work, and then we talked about how we maximize our time while we work. So one of the things that I learned the hard way, and maybe I saved you some time on, was that many of us worked at corporate before. And when you work at corporate, you have to show up at this time and leave at this time. Well, maybe that doesn't fit your industry. Maybe that doesn't fit your lifestyle. You need to think about critically, what do my clients need? How do I work every single day? And how can I maximize my time with the camera or the computer? The second part that we talked about were your peak times. We talked about batching work together. We talked about using a calendar as your bouncer. Remember, we talked about Calendly and the bouncer that's going to protect your schedule. We talked about the miracle of small business delegation. And then we talked about saying no. And I would love it if you told me about a story of when you said no recently. The third thing we talked about is money. We talked about how do you know if you're charging enough? How do you know if you're making enough? And we referenced the PPA benchmark study that's up on the PPA website. We talked about pricing yourself high enough so you actually make a profit, and that's a good thing. We talked about cash flow and how it's the grim reaper of small businesses. And if you don't have enough cash flow, it won't be long until you go out of business. Then we talked about how to find leads by networking and showing up in the right place. We talked about building alliances with other entrepreneurs. We talked about the question you should ask before you spend money. Do you remember my friend Warren, the financial bird? Will this expenditure make you money? Does Warren sit on your shoulder now? Hopefully he does. And then we talked about the vampires in your small business, which are subscription fees and auto renewals. So we talked about a lot of specific stuff, but the three big things were how we choose to spend our time, how we choose to spend and keep our money, and the vision of our small business. So when you get clear and you run for office on your ideal customer, you're going to cut through easier, you're going to grow faster, and ultimately, you're going to have more fun and be more fulfilled. And as a small business owner, remember, we get to pick. So do something you love. Life is too short to do something else. So that's what we talked about at Imaging. And if you weren't there, I know that the website will have the full presentation at some point. But hopefully today we can go through all of the changes and awesome stuff you're doing in your business because of the stuff we talked about.
Well, thank you. That was a great recap. I already have a question here from Edward, and I like Edward's style. He just asks all of the questions he has in one.
So let's go, Edward.
He's- this is the way to be. First, he writes, how long should we do our photography work for free before we start charging? I'm already like, ooh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I don't know why you'd have to do it much for free at all, Edward. I'm not a big fan of free work. I know that free
Mhm,
work has to happen in some instances when you start. And this is my business perspective heart talking. There are
mhm.
mentors and guides in PPA that will talk to you specifically about the photography side of this. So I'm putting an asterisk on my answer that maybe there's a
Yeah.
photography reason to do it differently than what I'm going to say.
Hmm.
But what I would say is if you can do free or ideally discounted work for your ideal client in exchange for reviews and referrals, it's a great way to
Hmm.
get started. So even if you're going to charge $1,000, let's pretend, and you go to one of your ideal clients and say, listen, I'll do it for materials and time. I'll only charge you 300 because I'm trying to build this studio. That's different than doing it simply for free, but you make that
Yeah.
very clear expectation with them. I'm doing this for you for a discount because I want a positive review and I want a referral, provided I do a good job. I'm not saying tell me something nice just cuz. But yeah,
Hmm.
don't do free work. Free work. Elena, what do you think? I'm sure you have
I
an
mean,
opinion on this.
I I would say the same. I think when you give things out for free, it can kind of I don't know what the right word is, like not degrade, but kind of cheapen the relationship a little bit. Or I think there's like a lack of respect
Hmm.
sometimes when you're giving something away for free. Um, and the second part of his question, he writes, what should we start charging at that point? Is going to the clients more productive? Do we need a studio to be productive if we can't afford it? So it sounds like this might be coming from a um, kind of a starting out early in your business type point of view. Um, and from what I've heard from other photographers is there is a period of time where you are learning a lot. You're new to your craft, um, and but it sounds like you shouldn't necessarily be giving things away for free at any point. I guess my question for you, Pat, would be what do you take from is going to the clients more productive? Like is kind of finding your client more productive or waiting for them to come to you? How do you interpret that question, I
It's
guess?
a, it's a good question. you want to
Mhm.
go out and meet as many potential clients as you can. This is where getting more narrow will help you if you're
Mhm.
just getting started. If you're a sports photographer and you're hanging out in the travel teams and the high school sports, and you're dealing with um, the parents of kids that are playing sports, you can probably get the momentum started easier because you're not chasing an entire market. The other
Mhm.
thing is, when you start, the first person you have to convince that you're worth getting money from is yourself. So getting paid for your work and reinforcing the fact that you're worth being paid is oftentimes the first hurdle that we have to get over. And let me tell you, Edward, if you are just starting out, or anyone that's watching this that's really just starting out, like,
Mhm.
there's nothing that feels better than opening your business and getting that first credit card transaction. That first, you were really good at this and there's money in your account. Oh gosh, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It's the
Yeah.
best thing ever. So
Mhm.
go build those relationships and get those first deals running. But I would definitely recommend heavily discounted to begin in exchange for the social proof of doing a good job than ever really going out and doing it for free. And if I can add one more thing, don't
Mhm.
worry about studio. Don't worry about beautiful websites. Don't worry about incredible organic social media. When you're
Mhm.
just starting out, it's a race to build relationships and do work and get credibility for that work. A lot of times,
Mhm.
people, when they just start, they overthink what they need to be
Uh-huh.
successful. You need a computer, you need a camera, you need some relationships, and you need to go sell something. Mission one: meet people, sell things. Go do it. That's really job one when you're just getting started. Just getting started.
It makes me think about photographers like really wanting to accumulate all this gear
Hmm.
before they, start like building their business. And I read a lot in comments on videos, people like, you don't need this gear. Like you just need X camera and X and Y things, and you're gonna be good for a while. And as you build your career, you're gonna be able to afford other things and figure out what makes sense in your budget to start building. Um, I love that question. And he also asks, what's your take on oh, this is a more photography related question,
Hmm.
but it probably could be answered by you as well. What's your take on taking photos of outdoor landscapes slash nature and sell prints of those? Curious what your take is on that, Pat, because I have some thoughts too.
Well, I definitely want your thoughts because I'm sure you're more qualified than I am. But the value of something is what someone will pay for it. So if you capture a stunning image and you put it in a place where someone wants that image on a print and you can make money on it, that's
Mm-hmm.
incredible. You don't need to go to
Yeah.
school. You don't need to have some certification to sell images that you capture. Find a great image, find someone to buy it, and go sell it. That's my greedy capitalist view of it all. So, what's your professional
Yes. So I mean,
reaction to that?
I've chatted with. I'm not a photographer myself. I'm a writer, but I've chatted with a lot of photographers, and what I have heard, this is from a couple of different PPA members who hold multiple degrees. They've been in the business for a while. Um, it was Dwight Okamoto, and he has all of the degrees, and he was saying, he lives in Hawaii and he takes photos of, the volcanoes, the mountains, the ocean. He's like, I love taking photos of nature, but a mountain isn't going to pay me to take a photo of it.
Hmm.
And I was chatting with another photographer recently, and he does a lot of nature, waterfalls, that type of thing. And as well, like if you're not selling a bunch of prints, kind of where's your income coming from?
Yeah.
And for this particular photographer, he went into engineering first instead of becoming a photographer right out of the gate. So photography was his side hustle, what he enjoyed doing on the side. So I guess I don't have a clear answer to this, but a lot of the times what you're going to get paid for it are people,
Hmm.
photos of people. So I think you can probably hone your craft in outdoor landscapes, nature, and you can enter competitions and you can get really good at it, and ultimately be valued for that work. But I don't know. Um, I can't answer from a very informed perspective on what it takes to be solely a landscape photographer.
Yeah. I would think
But
as
I'm
an
sure there's a market.
outsider, what was that?
I'm sure there's a market for it still. I mean,
Oh,
there must be.
absolutely.
Yeah.
As an outsider, here's what I would say is that if you're shooting landscapes, you're an artist, you're selling art.
Mhm.
If you're shooting families, if you're a senior picture photographer, you're selling emotions.
Mhm.
It's a different thing.
Mhm.
If you sit down in front, and I've seen my wife do this with families, you sit down with the mom or the grandma or, father, it doesn't matter who it is, but you show the image that captures the personality of the high school senior that they want to hold close even after they go off to college. That's the image you're selling. If you're
Mhm.
selling a volcano in Hawaii, you're selling art, and maybe you're selling the emotion that that person had on the trip to Hawaii. That's also great.
Mhm.
But as many professional photographers, I think, would agree, the artistic value of a high school senior is great. The emotional value would definitely sell even greater to the right parents.
Mhm. And I love it. Edward writes back. He's been doing pro photography since 2018, but he's just trying to make it a business now. So I mean, you've got years of photography under your belt, and you're a pro at it.
Yep.
Um, and it sounds like some of the topics covered in your class, Pat, you really spoke directly to all of these elements of what makes it someone a successful small business owner. And I love to kind of, while we wait for people to interact a little bit more, and just a reminder, everybody in attendance, please just drop in your questions if you have some, something that's on the top of your mind, or you want to pick Pat's brain a little bit more, please do. Um, I guess in terms of the pitfalls of being overly broad,
Mhm.
you mentioned earlier when we chatted, you said you can't cut through if you're not narrow. I guess I'm curious to explore a little bit more these strategies for narrowing your focus, and how to do that in a way that doesn't feel like you are detracting from all of your interests. And a lot of these photographers, they're like very variated. They have so many interests.
Mhm.
Could we talk a little bit more about that? I'm curious what comes up for you that we might have not covered yet.
For sure. Let's start by giving a big high five, Edward, high five for having the
Yeah,
guts to ask a question. Putting yourself out there is a courageous act. So be like Edward and put a
yeah.
question in the chat because we'd love to chat with you. To answer your question about narrowing down, boy,
Hmm.
there's a lot that goes here. First of all, we get to pick what we do for a living, provided there's a market to sell it. But the other reason why you want to get narrow is it makes it a lot easier for people to recall who you are and what you do. When you think of it from a restaurant's point of view, well, what are they known for? Oh, well, that's the sushi joint, right? If it was the sushi and chicken and waffles joint, it might be harder to recall because they have a menu like the Cheesecake Factory. They've just got
Yeah.
every piece of everything they could possibly make for you. And here's the thing where people get tripped up. They get tripped up between passion and ability
Hmm.
because you're talented enough to do many different styles of photography, but there's probably
Hmm.
one or two that you're on the planet to do with your whole heart and your whole being. That's where you're going to do your best work. That's where it's going to feel like play. That's where you're going to stick to it when things get hard. So when
Hmm.
people say, well, I do all sorts of photography, great. I'm sure you're awesome at it. I just want people to get really clear on what they love to do, provided there's a market. Like if you're
Yeah.
on the planet to shoot, jelly beans, maybe there's not a business there. But if you're on the on the planet to do high school seniors or headshots or whatever it might be, there's clearly a market for it. And again, back to courage, it's a courageous act to narrow
Hmm.
that down. So
Yeah.
really listening for where your passion is, provided there's profit there, is going to help you because then you have a chance to cut through. You can be remembered as the headshot photographer or
Yeah.
the high school senior photographer. So that's why I like people to do it because ultimately recall and referrals
Hmm.
is really huge when you're trying to grow the business.
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a great question that just came in too. Lauren asks, would you say let me wait. Would you say developing a routine, morning or night, etc., would help with increasing productivity? If so, where should you start? I'm sadly a nighttime scroller. LOL.
Oh man. Lauren, I'm telling you, it's so funny that you asked that question because I literally just went through this. I am a
Yeah.
Twitteraholic. Hi, I'm Pat. I'm a Twitteraholic, and I will stay on Twitter at night until I fall asleep. I've banned it from bed, and I've
Yeah.
banned it from the morning. So getting a
Mhm.
routine in is absolutely critical
Mhm.
because you don't have to think in the morning. I get up,
Mhm.
I make the coffee, I move, I write, and then
Yeah.
I open for business.
Okay.
So if you're a late night aholic, you know what's keeping you up.
Yeah.
So I would figure out what that behavior is that's harming your routine. And then I would
Mhm.
think about what do I need to do to be in a productive state when I sit down to build my business. And here's what
Yes.
happens. Here's what happened when I removed Twitter from my schedule. I slept better because I started reading real books. First of all, I fell
Yeah.
asleep a lot faster. And
Mhm.
Jules Verne isn't triggering me the way that, Twitter is triggering me as I'm flipping through.
Yes.
So I slept better. Then I got up on time because I didn't stay up too late. Then when I
Mhm.
put in exercise while the coffee was brewing before I got to the business, I felt better. But here's something I didn't anticipate. And this was the thing that made me go, oh my gosh. When I woke up in the morning and didn't turn my attention to other people, I started to hear my own voice again. I
Mhm.
woke up with things that I was thinking about. I was
Mhm.
on the treadmill with the things I was thinking about. When I sat down to write with my first cup of coffee, it was a lot easier to come up with new stuff because I wasn't triggered or worried about the email that I got or what am I going to say on this LinkedIn post. It
Mhm.
really opened up my engagement with what I thought I should be doing. So that's just a little example of routine, but that can be at 11:30 I take lunch. That can be I walk every 2 hours and I set an alarm. If you're aware of your behaviors and what's derailing you,
Mhm.
the bad part of being a small business owner is you probably don't have a boss. So no
Yep.
one's going to tell you or enforce you to do it. You have to do it yourself.
Mhm. Well, it's a really great question because I
Great
think
question.
it's something that affects everybody. Um, I can also recommend there are some like app um, what is it called? It's basically there's one app that I use called Opal, and it gives you these detailed breakdowns of your screen time so you can understand your habits better. And when you downloaded it, you will be disgusted by how much time you spend on apps. So just figuring out that you spend, 2 hours on Instagram when you could be reading a book, it really, and it helps. You can set these time limits. It's a very helpful tool. But I love the topic of routines and schedules because everybody is so different. But we have to, like you're saying, small business owners, you don't have a boss. You are your own boss. You're going to need to put some guardrails up and keep yourself in line.
Yeah. And
Um,
it doesn't get easy. It's a challenge
It's
every
always going to be
day.
hard, probably always. We got little monkey minds. We have to like keep one in control. Someone else writes, Fern wrote, do you feel marketing for photography is the same as for general businesses? Do you have any do you have any tips specific to photography? Um, I know you're not a photographer, but how
Mhm.
would you respond to that, Pat?
Well, I think there are photography specific things I'm not qualified to answer. So I will leave that to
Yeah,
the wisdom of PPA.
yeah.
What I've observed though is you still need to get the attention of the people you want to do business with. They have to
Mm-hmm.
understand what product and transformation you provide. And then you need to get them close enough in the know, like, and trust factor that they're willing to perform that service with you. So,
Mm-hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, if someone's hiring a service provider, all of those things are still true. But there are, like I say, geniuses in your industry that can speak on the photography specific stuff. So, I don't want to overstep there.
Absolutely. And I think exactly what you said is very on point. In terms of another great question that came through was what are some of the top mistakes new and intermediate business owners make? Um, I'm sure there's
Wow.
many mistakes that we make.
Yeah, I'm making them every day, first of all.
Yeah.
And that was just an unnamed person. Thank you, unnamed person.
Oh,
Yes.
this is Edward again. Yeah.
Edward, my man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, top mistakes.
Hmm.
One of them, I think, is doing everything but selling.
Okay.
The website's great, organic socials, wonderful. Your proposals look awesome, but you're not out there meeting new people trying to sell things. We are
Mm-hmm.
in a sales. I've heard it said, and I said this in our talk at Imaging. You are a salesperson and a photographer, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to build a small business, you need to be in the sales business and then in the service providing business, which breaks the heart of the artist in us. Because if we can just make enough pretty
Yeah.
pictures, we'll do fine, right? Well, you'll maybe do fine, but you won't get to where you want to go if you don't have a salesperson's heart. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing. The other thing that I see, and this is why I do my small business community, is that people get swallowed by imposter syndrome because they don't surround themselves with others that are willing to pick them up when they fall down. It is really easy if you're building your business by yourself to just be okay with the idea that I'm only going to charge 20% of what I could because I don't want to push it and I don't want to hurt their feelings, or you're pricing out of your own pocketbook, or you think, who am I to charge that much money? And you stumble and then you get stuck because when you get frustrated and you have no one around you, then you can get bummed out and then you can quit, you can crash.
Mm-hmm.
Having people around you on calls like this, in the loop, at PPA events, with your local statewide chapter, doing whatever it is to get people around you is absolutely critical. Because here's the thing, your family does not understand. They want to love you, they want to understand being a small business owner. They don't. Your friends that work in the big buildings downtown, they don't get it why it's such a big deal that you got that extra session because they get their paycheck every 2 weeks. They
Yeah.
don't get it. So you've
Mm-hmm.
got to have others around you that understand. Those are two of the big ones.
Mm. Oh, that's so potent. And I would add something I just heard yesterday on a podcast, and it was this. I'm blanking on her name, but she developed this budget. It's called the Budgetista, and she developed this budget program essentially. And she said shame is a shield. And we're talking about imposter syndrome. I think not having that community to share your problems with when you're going through a tough time, someone else who's experienced that, we can easily get kind of trapped in our own shameful thinking and shield
Mhm.
out any other messages that might kind of unstick us. So, which brings me to my selfishly a question I have for you,
Mhm.
which is, in you had a TED talk from a couple years back. I can't remember what year that was, but you
Mhm.
defined community as a group of people who get together to solve a problem that they share. And I think this community of photographers, there are lots of problems they all share together, and especially in terms of figuring out how to be the salesperson first. Um, what are some what are some tips on people forming these kind of collaborative and knowledge sharing groups in their community, either tapping into an existing one or making up one themselves? I'm curious what tips you'd offer since you do yourself, this is what you specialize in, is um, small businesses and encouraging them.
Yeah, I would start with the word community itself as you defined it. That's
Mhm.
how I defined it. And
Yeah.
community is a word that's so overused, it's like brand.
Yeah.
That people have used it so much that they're using it incorrectly, in my opinion. Everyone that has a
Mm,
podcast with 1,000 listeners has a community. Everybody that has a Facebook page with 500 members has a community. No, you don't. Unless they're talking to one another, it's an audience. If you're
ah,
sitting in the audience listening to someone, like right now, sadly, we don't have everyone on the screen talking with one another. So right now it's
mhm,
an audience because you're waiting for what we're going to say. But
mhm.
if we were in a room all collaborating with one another, now we're starting to create community. So it
Yes.
drives me batty to hear content creators with big audiences say they've got a community. They're all like minded, but they're not talking to one another on their shared mission. So it's not a community. So that's the
Mhm.
first thing. The second thing
Yeah.
is, where do you find them? Most of us, outside of our time we spend with PPA, which is great, most of us spend our other person time networking. We go to the
Yep.
Chamber of Commerce, we go to the eWomen Network, we go to meetups and we hold coffee cups and we talk with one another. But we're talking with bankers and CPAs and lawyers and salespeople, and they're not photographers. They don't get it.
Mhm.
So we don't spend our time talking with other people who are trying to solve the problems that we face. So
Mhm.
you're saying, I'm a photographer, I want a community. Well, who's on that shared journey with you? Other photographers.
Mhm.
So what does it take? Identify the problem that you want to solve and then lead. If
Mhm.
there's not a group in town, if there's not a group in your state, if there's not a group online,
Mhm.
start one.
Mhm.
Because business people are like forming blobs. We form blobs around where we live, what we do, or who we are. And that's great. Got to have your blob, but it's mostly networking. But
Mhm.
when you can create a group that has a shared mission, I want the photographers of Milwaukee to excel. So I'm going to bring them together for a lunch once a month. Why? Because I decided it's a good idea and I want Milwaukee photographers to excel. So if you're a Milwaukee photographer, let's go get tacos. Who can hate on tacos? This is great. So it
Yeah.
takes vision, it takes a shared mission, and it
Mhm.
takes leadership. And this leadership, the leadership and the action to make a community is not unlike the leadership and the action to go out and sell, or the leadership and the action to
Mhm.
narrow down your target audience. It
Mhm.
starts with an awareness that there's more to what I'm doing than what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take action to make a better day to day lifestyle for myself and for my family and for my business. And I'm no longer going to sit around and be satisfied with where I'm at. I'm going to act
Mhm.
courageously and I'm going to lead my business, even if I have no employees. And I'm going to try and make today better than yesterday. And sometimes that means leaving the cave. And that means going out and putting yourself out there like Edward. Shout out to Edward and Lauren for asking questions today.
I
You,
know.
you
I
got to
know.
you got to get out there and do the thing. And it
Yeah.
takes some courage and some oomph to go do that. I don't know how to spell oomph, but that's what it takes.
I could help you with the spelling of that.
Do that, please, because I don't know how that works.
I really love that. I love identifying the problem and then lead.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of people, I think in school, we're almost taught like, are you a leader? Or like kind of like almost like almost like there are some people in the world that aren't leaders and there's some
Right.
people that are, which okay, maybe we could agree that is the truth, but I think we all have that in us.
Hmm.
We are all like leading our own lives. So why not start thinking of yourself as a leader? And yeah, kind of I also love how you mentioned it's something bigger. It's bigger than your business. Like it's because you're right. Essentially it extends beyond just your business.
It does. And the TED talk that you mentioned, TEDx, I wish it was a TED,
Mhm.
the TEDx that I did a couple years ago, life is
Mhm.
too short to build someone else's dream. That I was
Mhm.
dissatisfied with being told what to do, so I wanted to go build my own small business. So if you're
Mhm.
sitting there today thinking my studio or my photography career needs to be bigger and better, what are you going to do about it? This is
Yeah.
your dream. Go build it. Go shoot what you see. Go follow your passion. Go build a business. But don't sit
Mhm.
around and say it isn't as good as it could be. Well, why isn't it?
Mhm.
Let's go do something about it. And I'd
Mhm.
like to think everyone on this call and everyone in PPA
Yeah.
would be delighted to support you. And the resources are out there. So pick
Yeah.
what you want to do and let's go get it.
Let's get it. Let's get this bag.
That's right.
Well, is there anything else? Is there anything else you'd like to plug? Because we're kind of coming up at time. I'm so appreciative of you being able to be here. Um, I'm. I also just got another question in, so I will
Sure.
gladly read that off.
Bring it
Edward.
on.
Edward's just someone showed up today, and it's Edward and a couple other people. I love it. Tips and tools for overcoming the fear of rejection and people either saying they're not interested or your prices are too high.
Oof.
Um, if someone says your prices are too high, how do you not cave in and lower your prices? I also own an auto detailing company, which only had five clients and 2 to 3 times as many no shows and cancellations. Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Like a three-parter.
Yeah.
Tips and tools for
Uh,
overcoming the fear of rejection, and then how to respond and not cave in and lower your prices when people are, um, yeah,
yeah. Great questions, Edward.
great question.
I hope I can give you something good on all of them.
Yeah.
The first one is tips and tools would be practice, is
Hmm.
getting more confident and doing it more frequently
Hmm.
is one way to do it. And I know it sounds self-serving because I'm going to tell you about smallbusinesscommunity.com, but you got to have the right people around you. You got to get
Hmm.
involved with the loop at PPA. You got to show up at stuff like this. You got to have
Yep.
people that understand that you can get feedback from. So that's another
Yeah.
way to do it. When you ask about what do you say when people say your prices are too high?
Mm.
If you're not hearing that, you're too low. The fix for my prices are too high is to make sure you're hitting the right people and ask more people.
Mm.
If you make a pitch and say my price is X and every single person says yes, you're too low. You need to be hearing your prices are too high, or you're not pushing the top end of your available rate. So
Yep.
do not live in a land where you get every deal you pitch on, because if that's the case, you're too low. And the way you fix that is not to come down. The way you fix that is to have such a strong pipeline of potential clients that you can say, well, sorry, we're not a fit, bye, and then go do the other 4 sales calls you have waiting because you've done such a great job building your lead list and your pipeline. So you can go out and make the money that you deserve. You deserve to be paid what you can get. So don't settle for someone else that thinks that you don't deserve that much money. Bless and release,
Mhm.
move on to the next lead, but do not give away your stuff for free. And then the
Mm.
last thing is, what about the slots where I had a bunch of appointments and they keep on canceling and it blows up my schedule? What do I do? Prepay, prepay. You
Mm.
get a session fee, you've got prints, to hold your spot, it's the session fee. And it's
Yep.
non-refundable. Either show up or don't, but I'm making the $500 or whatever your session fee is. And if
Mhm.
someone doesn't want to value you and respect you enough to
Mm.
hold your session fee, they're probably not a good lead in the first place.
Yeah.
So I know that's
That's
rapid
a
fire.
great
Those are 3
point.
different questions, but bleh, there you go, Edward.
That's a great answer. Something you said, I love. Amen to the session fee, says Nelia. And then she also writes, hang in there, Edgar, embracing that fear is part of it. I love that. You, what is it you meant? You basically said if you're not receiving this feedback, then
Mhm.
you're charging too low. Um, gosh, what did that remind me of? It, I guess it reminds me of, I've heard this repeated many times. And I'm also like, is there a way, gosh, I had a question about that. I
Mhm.
had a follow-up, a perfect follow-up. And now I completely blanked on it. But it was about that pricing kind of your you reinforce, you know, oh, I think I know what it was. You're specific on your pricing. Like
Mhm.
your pricing isn't just some, oh, I think it should be, 200 per session. It's like do the research. What is your time worth?
Mhm.
What's your hourly rate? Like kind of knowing these specifics. So when someone is questioning your pricing, you kind of have this like worked out, like what what does it cost to hire me?
Yeah.
Um, so it's like less of a negotiable thing. It's like, no, that is my rate. My rate is 135 and I'm confident on that. Or my rate is 247. Like it could be as weird. I mean, maybe it's not that weird. You don't choose a price that's that strange, but um, maybe that's your rate.
Your rate is what you say it is, and the way you set
Mm-hmm.
your rate is what people will pay for it. You are
Mm-hmm.
obligated to charge as much as people will pay and as much as you can ask for with a straight face. I
Mm-hmm.
need to make $40 an hour. I got a studio. My prints cost this much. So it's my hourly rate's $180. No, your hourly rate is 300 until people all say yes. Then it's 400. Then people all say yes. Then it's 700. Even if
Mm-hmm.
your expenditures are only 185. Great. You are
Yep.
obligated to ask for as much as you can ask for as long as people keep on saying yes. And that's
Yep.
just the cheerleader in me saying, I don't care what other people charge. I don't care what your hard costs
Yep.
are. I want you to go get paid.
Yep. I love that. He writes, should we charge by the hour or per job? Edward writes.
Great question. Again, pro photographers will tell you the right way to do that. My knee jerk reaction
Yeah.
is I always
Yeah.
tell my entrepreneurs I prohibit them from charging by the hour. And I prohibit them from charging by the hour unless it's industry standard, depending on what they do, because you're penalized for how good you are at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hiring someone for their hourly labor. I'm
Yeah.
hiring someone for the transformation they provide. And if they're really good at providing the transformation and it takes them 10 minutes and it would have taken me an hour, too bad. That's why they're a pro.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. Um, and I'm sorry, but I have to start wrapping things up. This has been such a great chat, so engaging. I'm also the question in the chat is where can we watch this again? Basically, on imagingusa.com/unpacked, I believe. Also, if you check our news in our news section, we have articles written about the Unpacked series, and it will take you right to this video. But again, this has been lovely. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Good luck. You're doing great. You're making all the right choices by tuning in and committing to your education and committing to your growth. Um, is there anything else you'd like to say, Pat? Closing remarks?
Closing remarks. We didn't get
Yeah,
enough sarcastic remarks, unfortunately. I like to have a lot of sarcastic remarks in the chat, or maybe we did and you just
those
didn't
two.
say them to us. Uh, Listen, I want small business owners to win. I want them to win when they collaborate with one another. If we get the chance to do something like this again, I want all of us to talk with one another. So when Edward
Yes.
asks a question, we all get to talk to one another so we can lift each other up and win.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I really appreciate your time and attention today. It's been an honor not only to be on stage in Louisville, but to be here with you today. And if there's more information, hit me up on LinkedIn, find me at smallbusinesscommunity.com. I'd be honored to be a part of your journey.
I love that so much. And also, you can check us out on YouTube. I don't let me forget that. Our social media person will not let me forget that. Check us out on YouTube. We have got great short clips on there too. If you ever want little actionable insights, um, check us out. And thank you again, Pat. This has been great. Y'all have a great Monday. All right. We'll see you later. Bye, everybody.